Hello everyone, welcome to the Lightning Ball channel. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so and activate the notification bell. Your support fuels my continued efforts. In our previous episode, we discussed how Diablo, Rimuru's most powerful demon subordinate, single-handedly slaughtered the commanding hierarchy of the Eastern Empire's army, marking the complete annihilation of the Empire's million-strong force. Following the suggestion of the Lord of Wisdom, Rimuru used the resurrection of the dead to revive 700,000 Imperial soldiers, assigning them responsibilities for the war within the underground labyrinth. Having experienced a painful death and subsequent revival by the Demon Lord, the Imperial soldiers fundamentally accepted their defeat. The first phase of the Empire's invasion had thus concluded in total victory of the Monster Federation. In this episode, we will delve into the first half of the victory ceremony and the joyous occasion of Benimaru's marriage. Let's get started. The day after reviving the 700,000 Imperial officers and soldiers, a grand victory ceremony was held at the Monster Federation's arena to celebrate the Federation's defensive battle victory. The ceremony was attended by various executives, residents of the Monster Federation, the Labyrinth Guardians, and guests from Malim's side including Albis, Phobio, Frey's recently sent guards, known as the Two Wings, Lucia and Claire, and representatives from the Dwargen nation. Once all the attendees had gathered, the celebration officially commenced. First to take the stage, standing beside Rimuru, was Shuna. As Rimuru's substitute, not being fond of public speaking, she initiated the ceremony with a speech to comfort and commend everyone present. During this, Rimuru pondered over the next steps. According to the plan, this celebration would involve awarding corresponding honors during the acknowledgement of achievements. Having acquired a substantial number of souls in this war, Rimuru intended to use these souls to awaken his subordinates, thereby bolstering their combat abilities. As per the Lord of Wisdom, to awaken a subordinate, they first needed to possess the qualifications to become a true Demon Lord, which is referred to as a Demon Lord seed. Rimuru had a total of 12 subordinates who met the evolutionary criteria. They were Ranga, Benimaru, Cheyenne, Gabaru, Gelb, Diablo, Testarossa, Ultima, Carrera, Kamara, Zijin, and Adelman. Once their eligibility was confirmed, awakening them into true Demon Lords would be possible with the provision of 100,000 souls each. However, this also brought about a concern. With nearly 1,000,000 souls acquired by Rimuru this time, awakening multiple subordinates became feasible, yet the exact consequences of such awakenings were unknown. Based on Rimuru's own experience during his awakening, he had undergone a process known as the Harvest Festival, leading to a low-activity mode where he was unconscious for 3 days, and even his subordinates fell into a deep sleep. If a similar situation were to occur again, it would mean key executives would be incapacitated during a critical period of the war. Nevertheless, Rimuru saw it necessary to proceed. The war had just concluded, and the Eastern Empire lacked residual military strength, meaning it would take some time before they could launch another attack. The only concern was the Emperor Rudra's Imperial Guardians. In the previous battle, Bernie and Jiwu from the Imperial Guardians, ranked within the top 10, had caught Rimuru, Benimaru, and Chloe off guard. If even higher-ranked members were to act, not to mention the top fighters like Benimaru, subordinates like Cheyenne, Ranga, and Gabra would face significant threats. Hence, it was crucial to use this brief interlude to enhance their powers, preparing for any unforeseen challenges. So, when Shuna's speech concluded, the award ceremony officially commenced. The first to be called was naturally Benimaru, who, as the supreme commander of this war, had excellently fulfilled his role in leading the entire army. Called by name, Benimaru approached and knelt before Rimuru, while Shuna began to read out his accomplishments. At the same time, Rimuru conveyed to Benimaru information about the awakening process. Rimuru then informed Benimaru that he planned to awaken him along with 8 others first, leaving Testarossa, Ultima, and Carrera behind as guards. This arrangement, Rimuru believed, should suffice to buy some time. Once Benimaru understood the situation, Rimuru also expressed his concerns. In Rimuru's view, Benimaru and the others were already stronger than Rimuru had been before his own evolution. Therefore, after their evolution, they might become even stronger than Rimuru himself. While Rimuru didn't suspect them of betrayal, the possibility of them going berserk due to the awakening posed a potential disaster to everyone present. Benimaru understood Rimuru's decision to awaken them despite various uncertainties in his heart. This filled Benimaru with a feeling of being cherished almost divinely. He looked resolutely at Rimuru, making a bold promise never to go berserk. With that, Rimuru turned to the audience and loudly proclaimed Benimaru's exceptional command in the war, bestowing upon him the title of Flare Lord from that day forth. This title was given because, even after becoming a demon lord, Benimaru couldn't publicly declare himself as such. Instead, Rimuru granted each of those equivalent to true demon lords their unique titles ending in Lord, a sort of demon lord in his service. Benimaru, originally quick to anger yet now more composed, still had a fiery spirit at his core. As a demon lord in allegiance with Rimuru, no title was more fitting than Flame Lord. Subsequently, a soul corridor formed between Rimuru and Benimaru, channeling 100,000 souls towards him. Benimaru's aura began to swell, indicating the onset of his awakening. However, after a brief moment, his aura returned to normal. Despite absorbing so many souls, there was no apparent change in Benimaru, leading to an awkward silence. Breaking the stillness with a puzzled expression, Benimaru revealed that the issue seemed to be on his end. He had heard the voice of the world offering him the choice to evolve from an Oni to a divine Oni, but this evolution meant he could no longer have children. In this world, children born from two loving beings consume their parents' magicules, sometimes even shortening their lifespan, leading most powerful races to avoid reproducing. Divine Oni, being a kind of spiritual life form that can resurrect unless their core is destroyed, naturally wouldn't be concerned with lineage continuation. However, Benimaru's predicament lay in his role as the chief of the ogres. Even now, he clung to this identity, feeling responsible for his tribe's continuation since they were annihilated, leaving him as the only a few survivors. It seemed he couldn't evolve without fulfilling this duty. Benimaru's delay in marrying and having children was also due to his popularity among the females in the Monster Federation, particularly Hakura's daughter Momiji and the Beast Nation's Albies, both a beautiful girl and a beautiful woman, making his choice for a wife challenging. Hearing this explanation, Rimuru and Benimaru exchanged silent glances while the ceremony continued, with all attendees eagerly awaiting to see what reward Rimuru would bestow upon Benimaru. Facing such an urgent and awkward situation, Rimuru made a decisive move. Ignoring Benimaru's hesitancy, Rimuru raised his voice and announced that as a reward, Benimaru wished for Rimuru's permission to marry. Benimaru was completely taken aback. The arena erupted in huge cheers. Shuna, Cheyenne, and others were happy for Benimaru's growth, while Hakura silently rested his hand on his sword's hilt. Momiji and Albies, the main heroines, stepped beside Benimaru with Rimuru's permission. Momiji was the first to speak, requesting Rimuru's permission to marry Benimaru. Immediately following, Hakura expressed his willingness to transfer all his merits from the war to his daughter to fulfill her wish of marriage. Still struggling to grasp the situation, Benimaru remained stunned, his mind seemingly frozen. However, Albies, albeit a beat slower, complicated matters further by asking Rimuru to allow her to become Benimaru's second wife. To Rimuru's surprise, both women were unusually harmonious and happy, suggesting that to ease Benimaru's mind, they wished for him to marry both of them. Finally catching up, Benimaru turned to Rimuru with a pleading look, while Rimuru returned a similar gaze to the Lord of Wisdom for help. After a moment, the Lord of Wisdom found a reason to refuse, citing the Monster Federation's law. Polygamy was allowed only for widows wishing to bear children, meaning Albies couldn't be allowed as a second wife unless there was no husband or the husband was deceased. However, Albies, eager to marry, had thoroughly studied and researched the Monster Federation's marriage laws. She revealed that she was, in fact, a widow. Albies explained that she had recently married but tragically lost her husband, thus meeting the criteria for polygamy and qualifying to become Benimaru's second wife. Rimuru wore a look of panic, concerned about the implications of this revelation, especially given the recent war. If Albiz had lost her husband while aiding Rimuru's cause, it could spell trouble. Rimuru hastily inquired about the identity of Albiz's late husband, only to be astonished to learn it was Phobio, who sat among the guests. Phobio, as one of the three Biscuiteers, had been tricked into becoming Charybdis, causing significant trouble for the Monster Federation. Rimuru was familiar with him and knew he was very much alive. Confused, Rimuru and Benimaru tried to make sense of the situation. Phobio, sensing Rimuru's discomfort, joined Albiz and knelt down, wearing a guilty expression. Through their joint explanation, Rimuru finally grasped Albiz's scheme. Essentially, to secure the position of wife, Momiji and Albiz had gone from rivals to allies, devising a plan to marry Benimaru together. Their solution involved Albiz marrying Phobio first, then staging a duel to the death in the labyrinth. This allowed Albiz to obtain widow status while ensuring Phobio's survival, as resurrection was possible in the labyrinth. It should be noted that one of the duel's conditions was that if Phobio won, Albiz would genuinely marry him, explaining his willingness to partake in this charade. However, in the end, it seemed Phobio was somewhat the pitiable party. At this moment, Shuna stepped forward, applying pressure on Benimaru. She pointed out that Momiji and Albiz had demonstrated their commitment to such an extent that it was time for Benimaru to respond like a man. With the situation escalating, the crowd began to urge Benimaru to make his choice. Deep in thought, Benimaru weighed his reasons. Firstly, he believed it dishonest to love two people since Magians could only bear children with true love. Secondly, his evolution would grant him eternal life, inevitably leading to a permanent separation from Momiji and Albiz. However, Momiji and Albiz assured him that his concerns were unfounded. They planned to evolve themselves after raising their children, or at least ensure their offspring would bring joy to Benimaru. Strengthened by their unwavering resolve, Benimaru finally made his decision, asking Rimuru-sama to allow him to marry both women. The outcome by then was apparent. Rimuru leaped from his seat, transformed into his human form, and loudly granted permission, acknowledging the soul bond, a spiritual union, between Benimaru, Momiji, and Albiz. This affirmed the notion that Magians could not have children without love. Hearing this declaration, a smile crept on Benimaru's face, and he blushed slightly. Still, he stood tall, embracing Momiji and Albiz. He thanked everyone present, and vowed to love both his wives dearly, showing his sincerity. His words elicited roaring cheers from the arena, with the audience blessing the newly formed trio. Envious comments were made too, but they were all in good spirit. Thus, with a look of sheer happiness, Benimaru left the stage. The celebration continued with the next awards given to the three great army commanders, Gabda, Geld, and Gabaru. Starting with Gabda, unfortunately, he did not qualify for evolution. His battles were primarily conducted through unification with the magical wolf Ranga, rendering regular equipment unsuitable. Additionally, having little need for money, his reward was unique: the right to interact with Rimuru-sama in his usual, casual manner, regardless of the setting. This was a deliberate choice. Gabda, evident from his demeanor, struggled with formal speech. To avoid potential blunders and considering external perceptions, it was decided to acknowledge Gabda's distinct privilege. This announcement was met with an even louder uproar than Benimaru's moment, filled with unveiled envy, including from Cheyenne and Shuna, who glared menacingly at Gabda. Grasping Rimuru's intention, Gabda bowed deeply in gratitude with a beaming smile. When mentioning Gabda, one cannot forget Ranga and his advisor, Hakuru. Hakuru received a legendary weapon newly forged by Kurobe, while Ranga, having the qualification to evolve, was granted the title Star-Lord by Rimuru. Upon receiving 100,000 souls, Ranga retreated into Rimuru's shadow, falling into a deep slumber. Next were Geld, from the High Orc race, and Gabaru, the Dragonet. They were respectively bestowed with the titles Barrier Lord and Draco Lord. Empowered by these new strengths, both underwent their awakenings. Even their respective Orc and Dragonet subordinates received blessings, significantly enhancing their powers, just as anticipated, resulting in a substantial boost in combat capabilities. The next segment of the awards ceremony focused on the 3 primordial demon beauties, previously appointed as diplomatic, intelligence, and inspection officers. If the sole focus was on bolstering the overall combat capabilities of the Monster Federation, the logical choice would have been to prioritize the evolution of the 3 demon peers. Given their already formidable strength, Rimuru harbored concerns about their ability to manage and harness their powers post-evolution. Consequently, Rimuru decided to first observe the evolution of Diablo, a fellow primordial demon, to gauge the potential outcomes. However, these 3 were not left without rewards. As recent additions to the Monster Federation, they were officially recognized as core executives, granted command authority during wartime, and each received a distinct title: Testarossa as Killer Lord, Ultima as Pain Lord, and Carrera as Menace Lord. With this, the first half of the victory celebration proceeded smoothly. Up next were the awards for the most significant contributors to the war, the Labyrinth Guardians, followed by the stories of Diablo and Cheyenne. Alright, that's all for this video. In the next episode, we'll talk about the 12 Guardian Lords of the Chaos creator Rimuru-sama. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support fuels my continued efforts. See you in the next one.